Hey everybody, welcome to Around the Farm, the podcast about all things ag. I'm your host, Clint Schaffer, and today we're going to be talking with Shawn Kand from Backroads Consulting about the importance of crop scouting and all the tools you need to be successful. So stay tuned. Hey Shawn, I just want to say thanks for joining the podcast here today and taking time out of your busy schedule. How about you introduce yourself to the listeners here?
My name is Shawn Kand. I own a company called Backroads Consulting in Owensboro, Kentucky. I've been in this area for almost 21 years. Started out in research, moved into crop scouting, then moved into retail. Was in retail for many, many years, and back in 2017, I decided to start my own independent crop consulting advising company here in the area, and it's been a great decision for me to do that. It's been very, very positive.
So I always got to ask, anybody that jumps out there and takes that initiative to start their own business, I mean, how was that? Walk me through that decision.
It was difficult. I mean, I went around and visited several of my customers kind of secretly at the time and asked if they'd be interested in me just being their full-time advisor. And after a few short weeks, I had close to 16,000 acres to scout. So
oh, wow.
Once I kind of did the math with that, I quit. And once the word got out that I quit, I then had close to 18,000 acres to scout. So that's my limit right there. I really difficult to take on any more business, and I do truly believe you really need to take care of the customers who've taken care of you. So I really concentrate on the guys who were there in the beginning for me. So.
Well, I just assume, Shawn, that you got that many acres that quick out of the gate, probably for the reputation that you had before that. So I would say that speaks a lot of you.
I feel very fortunate. Yes.
That's great. I mean, just as of right now, here we are in the summertime. How's it looking? Just the crops looking like in your area? It's
finally found its legs. Honestly, there through end of April and May, we were struggling to get our beans were up. We can discuss slugs if you want. We struggled, but we finally got some temperatures, we got some heat, we got some sun out, and now the crop absolutely looks very, very good considering what we went through. So.
Well, I don't mind talking slugs, but my favorite kind of slugs are deer slugs. That's what I'd rather talk about,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It was impressive this year.
When you're going out there, I mean, just speaking of that, what kind of things are you looking for when you're out in the field? I mean, you talk about slugs and things of that nature. What other kind of pest and disease are you looking at when you're out in the field?
This year, I mean, every year is this way, but Pythium in corn is a big one. That we had several acres this year that come to affect us. And then just overall insects, wireworms, another one. In soybeans, the main insect in the spring this year has been slugs. Those are the main diseases, and a lot of the main insects, wireworms, grubs, flea beetles. I mean, when you're out, I know there's a lot of technology in the world right now with drones and stuff, but I really don't think that's ever going to take place of boots on the ground to physically have a shovel and dig that plant up and see what's going on.
I mean, you talked about earlier, about just how many acres that you're covering. I mean, that's a ton of acres, and I would assume that's a lot of fields for you to cover as well, with a lot of things that you're looking at, whether it's pest disease or anything of that nature. How do you cover that much ground? What kind of tools are you using?
Well, I've got a Polaris Ranger. In the spring, I can zoom across the field, and it's funny. My growers and I, we have the joke: when you've got a field that's going good, you're through that thing fast. I mean, when everything's firing all cylinders, you can tell, and you don't have to spend much time there. I'll spend 3 times as much time in a field that's going wrong, just trying to figure out what's happening, what disease is here, what's causing this problem. Is it compaction? Is it something the grower's done? Is there something I can try and, hey, we're seeing this. Hey, on the next acres, you need to make a change, But when acres are good, man, you fly through that field. You're moving on to the next. So that's one reason why if growers do it, what's the old saying well sown, half grown. I mean, if everything's going, man, you're off to the races, and you really don't have to spend much time on those acres trying to find a problem, because there usually isn't one.
In a previous episode, or our last episode, we talked a lot about the importance of stand counts, right? And understanding emergence coming through at the beginning of the season. Talk me through just what your process is to go around all these fields to just make sure that we're getting off to the right start.
Well, honestly, my process starts actually in February. I actually get samples of seed and send off to labs to get tested.
Oh, wow.
So we've done a saturated cold germ test. We've run paracarp damage tests. We get those results back. I've got a spreadsheet that I put it on. I bring it to the customer, and we sit here and go over, hey, these varieties here, we need to be planting first. They have the best scores. Paracarp damage is low. These varieties here, they've got saturated germ tests are coming in the 70s. Your paracarp damage is plus 10%. We ought to hold off till later in the season to plant these, or when we're in more vibrant, warmer conditions. So that's kind of the start of getting good stand counts and getting the start. I mean, it's expensive as this seed corn is. The first opportunity you get in the ground, it's got to be perfect. It really needs to be the best hybrid, the best seed going in the ground to get that start you want. So, and then once the seed comes up, then we're out there doing our stand counts. We're saying, are we seeing what the data showed? Are we getting problems? And honestly, this year I had some high paracarp damage on some seed, and it kind of funny, some of that high paracarp damage, I ended up having some pythium problems on that seed. So I don't know if there's necessarily a correlation there. It just may have just been a fluke, but it was kind of interesting how some of that stuff fell into place.
Well, I tell you what, my father farms, and we try to go out there and scout a few fields, but I typically probably don't have the right tools. If I'm going to go out and scout a field, what kind of advice would you give me? You said ranger and you said digging up, so I'm going to assume I'm going to need a shovel. What are the other tools that would help you scout? Tape measure, of course, to measure out your length you need to count. And of course, your cell phone, take those pictures, get an understanding, because there's sometimes I'm not perfect. There's some things I'm going to see that I don't know. I can snap a picture of it and then do my research on the internet at night, trying to figure out exactly what's going on. Those are the main tools for me, and then just what's up in your brain, just your knowledge to realize when you see something that's wrong, ask why. Why is this happening? Why is this going on? What has happened within the planter? Understanding how the tractor was traveling through the field is a big one. Knowing which direction the tractor was planting, know which side of the row. I mean, that's a big one for me. Is I can, if you're really paying attention, you can see row number 9 is giving this guy fits. Hey, call him on the phone saying, hey, check row 9, something's happening. A lot of times when we figure those things out, we're already done planting, unfortunately, but it's something for next year. That's the other thing. You look at crop. I mean, you have one opportunity this year to try and get something right. And if you are sitting at the end of the year and you've learned nothing from this previous year, you've wasted a year. I mean, you literally have wasted your time, in my opinion. You always need to be trying to push that envelope, looking for different ideas, looking for different things. And if there are problems in the field, what can we do to address it? What is something that is it something we can fix? Is it environmental that we can't fix? Control the controllables, control what you can control. Now, you mentioned a lot of like physical tools, right? With the tape measure and the like I said, the shovel and everything else. What about from like a digital standpoint? Are there tools that you're using to look at some of that data? So yeah, I mean, I use FieldView a lot. It's a big impact on. I can't keep up with where all the varieties are planted across 18,000 acres. So growers that use FieldView, I don't have to call them up every 10 minutes. Hey, what's planted here? When's the planting date? What's going on? Blah, 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 blah. I have it all in my hand. And that's a big advantage to me, where I don't have to keep up with all the information that I have. I do run my own scouting app, which is nice. It actually has as I drive through the field, it shows exactly where I am in the field. I can record pictures. And then before I leave the field, I usually send that grower an email or a text message, and it's got a PDF version sent to them.
So growers seem to like that. It gives them a record to show that I was in the field, of course, and then they've got some recommendations, some ideas what's happening in that field, what's really going on for them, where they don't have to worry about it, or, hey, we got a problem. We need to, hey, let's get together and go look at this together and see if we can figure it out.
Well, you mentioned before, like if row 9 is not functioning and being able to see that, and Dad and I, of course, we run FieldView on our operation as well, and we had just a small tick of population that was kind of affecting one row, and you kind of think like, okay, maybe it's just that row, and we finally opened up the meter and looked at it, and sure enough, one of those little holes in that plate was plugged up with the end of a piece of seed, so it is important, right, to understand that and be able to see all that data.
It's absolutely important, and again, a lot of times in one grower's example I found, I think it was row 4, there's something wrong with his drop. The emergence was erratic, as well as the spacing was terrible. But again, by the time I noticed this, we're 99% done. So again, it's bringing that planter into the shop this summer and going through it and making sure it's ready to go for next year. But if you need to have someone, if you're not doing it, you need to have someone out there looking at these things, because that's expensive. If one row's going out, who's to say that you don't have 3 or 4 rows going out? I had one grower, he got a new planter this year, hydraulically driven for the first time, and we noticed when the corn came up that we had spacing was perfect within the first 4 or 5 feet. Then it would skip. We'd have these big gaps, and it followed this same pattern across the whole planter all the way. And we haven't figured it out truly. We got to get it back out into a pasture field and figure it out. We think it's actually the hydraulics on the tractor is not feeding enough to the planter, and it's doing this surging effect out in the field. So unfortunately, he planted, 800-900 acres of corn that way. But it just, you don't see he didn't notice it on his monitor. It just wasn't picking it up quick enough. But we noticed it out in the field doing our stand counts. It's like, something's wrong. We gotta fix this. And again, hopefully we can get it lined out this summer in a pasture field somewhere and try and figure out what's going on.
You just talk about, troubleshooting different things and going out into the field and looking for disease. I mean, it just really goes into the importance of I always say farming takes a team, right? It takes a team, and it takes a lot of folks with a lot of knowledge. And just a few things that you've hit on here, Shawn. It's a lot of different aspects of farming and a lot of different even time frames. How were you able to just jump right into that, or how have you kind of kept up on some of those different pieces throughout the season to really have that full season consulting business?
It's not easy. Like this year, I probably spent way more time in soybeans than I think I ever have. I actually, landlords were calling the farmers, and I can see beans just disappearing in the field due to slugs. And I spent way more time in soybeans than I ever thought I would. And it does come down to managing. I work a lot of Sundays trying to play catch up on the corn acres. The corn acres were a lot less impacted by the weather this year than soybeans were. So every year is slightly different. Next year we'd have problems in corn, and soybeans be a breeze. So as you transition, I'm now starting to do node counts on soybeans. We're getting into the reproductive stages on soybeans, understanding we're just past the summer solstice. So how many nodes do I have for the soybeans this year? I'm wanting to try and hit a certain goal for yield. I need to have as many nodes as possible by the summer solstice. So our planting dates play a big part in that on beans, on corn. We're looking at diseases right now. I've been gray leaf spot, physoderma, diplodia leaf streak. All these things are starting to show up, and I'm starting to make recommendations on corn. So there's always something to do, but it's a transition. You just got to stay on top of it as efficiently as you can. And some fields, like I said, they've been firing all cylinders all year long. I may go visit them just a couple of times, and then there's another farm on the same guy I may visit 20 times in a season because we've had problems, we've had issues. How are they coming along? Do we need to do something different? Do we need to replant? So it's a fun job. It can be I've got a couple of farmers that make jokes with me that I always seem to give them bad news. Between April 1st and the end of May, I'm the Grim Reaper. It's like I never give positive news. But again, I've also had the same conversation with growers that have said, I'm glad you're here because we wouldn't have noticed this for another 2 weeks because we're still busy as can be planting. We wouldn't have gone back and looked at that field for another 2 weeks, and here you are giving us a head up that we have a serious problem, and we're going to just pull a planter off and go do something different. So that's a positive. I need to get positive feedback too every once in a while. So
no, understand that. I think a lot of times no news is good news, right? And when you get news, it's usually about an issue, and I think that's just kind of natural.
Yeah. I try and give them good news as well. I'll start out with that. Like, hey, this farm, Smithfield, looks great, but over here we got an issue.
So farmers have consultants, right, to help them work through the seasons. I mean, do consultants have consultants? I mean, do you ever run into some roadblocks where you just got to phone a friend or have some folks that you got to lean on a little bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, being in the role that I've been in retail, I've never burned any bridges with any of the retailers that I've worked with. I still get phone calls from them. I call them. If they've got a new product, I ask questions. Hey, what's going on with this? I need to know. So if I have issues, I've got to lean on somebody. I lean on the manufacturers. I lean on the retailers. There's a few university people, I follow on Twitter and things just to keep up with what's going on. So communication in this day and age is. You got to have a core group of people you can always fall back on. And I feel fortunate that, like I said, I've never burned bridges with any people I've worked with. And it's been an asset to be able to just pick up that phone call and say, hey, I'm seeing something here I've never seen before and I need some help. So I'm not scared to ask for it.
Another big thing too, just leaning on that trust piece, right? I mean, a farmer puts a lot of trust in you, right? I mean, you talked about making recommendations, which is really, helping them make those key decisions. And I would assume some of those recommendations are maybe out of the comfort of their wheelhouse, right? Maybe it's a certain disease, or maybe they need to spray fungicide. Kind of talk me through how do you build that confidence or build that trust to get a farmer to try something maybe that they haven't done yet?
The biggest one it happened a couple of times this year was replant. In all honesty, the several people who had looked at the same field, you need to keep it. You need to keep it. And I was adamant that it needed to be replanted. I even told a grower I wanted on the record that I disagree with this decision. And about 2 days later, they turned around and they ended up following my recommendation. And they actually called me up one day and said, "Man, you were right. That was the right decision," because our neighbors didn't. Yep. And now we're looking at what their crop looks like, and we look at what ours looks like. And you made the right call there. And that builds that confidence in me too, that I'm making those right decisions. So certain growers do have a knack for willing to try things. I mean, I've got a handful of guys that I'll come up with some crazy idea. They're like, "Oh yeah, here, we'll do 25, 30 acres." They're not scared to take that risk in that. If it sounds like a sound idea, then I've got a handful of guys that they're a little bit older generation, and they need a little bit more encouragement, or they're just not going to try things. So with my guys who are a little bit more, I hate to use the term progressive, but they're out there on that limb. They're willing to try things, and that's important. You should always be pushing that envelope a little bit more, changing nitrogen rates, lowering nitrogen rates, doing Y drops, 2x2 applications, running different things in furrow potentially. So if a guy's continuing to do the same thing, I promise you he's not going to the next level if he keeps doing the same thing every year.
You know, my old man's been going at it for, I think, a little over 50 years now, and we still do population trials. We're still trying to do planting date trials. And I loved your comment earlier that if you get to the end of the season and you didn't learn anything, you missed out, right?
You missed out.
And I think taking that advantage of just trying to learn something new,
Yeah.
I just think that's such an important piece. So I love hearing that you're an advocate of that. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I tease one of my farmers. I told him he's like, I think he's 55, 56 years old. And I kind of looked at him one day. I said, you only have maybe 15 more years to get this right. So, you got to learn something every year. You got to keep on it.
So Shawn, I got to get into the important topics here. I got to ask, how's Copper doing? I mean, he was in one of the videos here. So how's he been?
He's doing good. I've upgraded my truck, so I had a smaller truck with just a little small extended cab, so he didn't have a whole lot of room back there. And actually, I picked up a truck this year that has a full cab, 4-door, and so he's just sprawled out. He's all the entire back seat. I've raised the seats up, so he's got the whole back seat all to himself. So he's doing well.
For those that may not know, Copper is Shawn's dog. So what kind of dog is he?
He's a yellow lab. I've had him. He's going on 6 years old. He's probably the smartest dog I've ever had. He's a great companion to take with you during the day. The farmers love him. They always ask about him when he's with me. I've got several farmers that actually have bags of treats for him when we go visit. So he goes with me about every day. He rides in the Polaris when he gets tired. We've got a Yeti cooler in the back of the Polaris that I empty the drain plug and fill his water bowl up, and we've got a nice little system together, and he's usually ready to go every single morning, almost sitting out my bedroom door just waiting for me to get going. So
I tell you what, Shawn, there's just not much better in life than a good old farm dog, man. That is great to hear. Anytime you can have a dog palling around with you, especially when you got to work, it just makes work even more fun, right?
It is, yeah. It's been enjoyable having him. He can be a pain. It's like having a little kid with you all the time, but he's enjoyable to have around.
Well, hey, I really appreciate this conversation, Shawn. I appreciate, again, you taking time out of your day. I do have to ask, it's one thing, that we like to ask all of our guests, but what is the one piece of advice or the best piece of advice that you've ever received in regards to your career?
Well, it had to do with me starting this business. One of my growers who actually really convinced me to do this, he said, you don't want to be 65 years old looking back on your life and regretting that you didn't at least try to do this. Because he said, someone will hire you. You've been in this area too long. Take this risk, because if it doesn't work, you'll have another job. Don't worry about that. Someone will hire you. Retailer, manufacturer, just don't even think about it. Just take the leap. And best advice I've ever been getting. And it's made a quality of life for me so much more enjoyable, being your own boss. My whole family is kind of involved in this a little bit. My daughter helps me with a little bit of work on the computer. My wife, drops letters off for me, invoices. I mean, it's been enjoyable, and it's I'm very fortunate to be in the position I am with such great customers, and I feel like I'm fortunate to be a trusted advisor for their farming operations.
Well, that is absolutely wonderful, and to be able to get your family involved in your business again, just it makes it even more enjoyable, right? So. Well, hey, again, thank you for jumping on. We won't take any more of your time. I know you're busy this time of year, but we'll maybe bring you back on maybe towards the tail end of harvest. See how some of these results came in.
I'd love to do it.
Hey, I just want to thank Shawn again for joining us here on Around the Farm. And if you have a question you'd like to ask Shawn, be sure to drop us a comment. Also, if you like the podcast, be sure to like the podcast and subscribe and ring the bell to get notified each and every time that we push out new episodes. And with that, we'll see you around the farm.